All right, YouTube, this Detroit's HPTV coming to you out of Detroit, back with another video on this Tuesday. We got to talk about what's going on in Chicago. Chicago is terrible. They just was given the notorious award of being the unalive capital of the country. You know, the M word we can't say on YouTube, but unalive capital. Now, that is a terrible thing for a city to be called the unalive capital of the country. And it's predominantly in the black community. Now, these liberal run cities that have these so called pro black politicians that they identity voted in know these same statistics and know what's going on in their cities. But instead of making their cities safer, they're out here protesting the deportation of criminal migrants. They out here wanting to protest and sabotage everything the new administration is doing while the inner cities are chaos. Now, Brandon Johnson is one of the worst offenders out there in Chicago. And you got to salute the people in Chicago because they're standing up to this mayor who has put everybody's interest above theirs. You know, typical Democrat shield. You know the type. But he's just a dark face in a high place. But he's doing worse than they could have even imagined as a mayor. Now I want you to watch these two clips. The first one, I want you to see what's going on in Chicago. It's for fair usage under the 1976 Copyright Act for commentary and educational purposes. Check out what's going on.
Well, Chicago is named America's murder capital for the 13th consecutive year. And Democrat leaders are now being called out for demonizing police and touting a declining crime rate despite the concerns of residents from all across that city. Let's bring in Raymond Lopez, Democratic Chicago alderman. Your city, unfortunately, is the murder capital. Raymond, why?
You know, well, the reason is simple, John. We have a political elite that is in love with criminality, that encourages criminal behavior, pushes down our police officers, demonizes their work on a daily basis, and elevates the perpetrators of crime as the victims of society themselves. And that kind of coddling has brought us to where we are today for the 13th year in a row. Right now, the disregard for human life is so high in the city of Chicago that you can literally have a group of 100 teens enjoying a warm day and almost expect at least 2 or 3 to be shot. And we, in fact, saw that just 2 days ago where a 15-year-old was shot in a crowd walking down the Magnificent Mile. And many of our politicians, like Brandon Johnson and others, continue to make excuses, continue to rationalize this behavior as opposed to hold them and their parents accountable for what's going on.
There was a congressional hearing earlier this month at which Mayor Brandon Johnson appeared, and Congressman Darren LaHood got into a bit of a sparring match with him. I want to play this for our viewers.
Last year, Chicago had 573 murders.
Down.
Okay, but I want to compare that to the city of New York that is almost 2/3 the size of Chicago, 337 murders. So you had 573 murders in the city of Chicago, and you're 1/3 the size.
That's the lowest amount in 5 years under my leadership.
Okay, and you look at the level of violent criminals, sexual offenses, and drug dealers.
All violent crime is down in Chicago.
When I hear your answer, no one in this room should be surprised that your approval rating is 6.6%.
The mayor seems satisfied with the way things are going. What do you say?
Well, I think acknowledging the 6.6% approval rating was probably the only truthful thing that happened at that hearing, because even in that instance, the mayor was deflecting. He was lying, because the reason that the numbers are down in his estimation is because they've been able to use jurisdictional overlap to try and negate even more numbers being added to our totals. If it happened on an expressway or a county road, then they don't count in the city of Chicago, even if it happened within our borders. But what I do know is this, is that people aren't calling 911 anymore.
So what they're saying is it's worse than we imagined because they're just not reporting a certain amount of numbers. But this is your liberal mayor. This is Brandon Johnson. This is what identity politics has gotten our communities.
People are afraid. Police are unable to do their job because of cancellation of gunshot detection technology and other things. We know that the perception of the violence in the city of Chicago is real because the violence in the city of Chicago is real. And the mayor can try to do that performance as much as he wants, but the people know better and they can feel it, especially on the south and west sides and predominantly African-American communities, where you have entrepreneurs trying to pursue the American dream and are being vandalized, shoplifted, and destroyed simply because of the location, because the mayor refuses to call out communities for the behavior that's going on in them.
I want to put up a graphic that shows the year-to-date crime statistics for your city. Now, these are according to the Chicago Police Department. These might be some of the numbers that the mayor was referring to. Murders down 10%, robbery down 34%, battery down 15%, carjacking down 31%. Total crimes, according to the police department, down 17%. Are they fudging those numbers?
They're absolutely fudging those numbers because they're reclassifying and subdividing them into various different ways to avoid them being included in the total number of each of those various crime categories. For example, there are 5 different ways to refer to carjacking, of which 4 out of those 5 will be reported as the main crime statistic, where everything else will be downplayed as something else or we refer to something else. But we know that that semantical argument does not reflect the truth of what's going on in the city of Chicago. Crime is not down here, and the lack of reporting of crime is up. When you look at the robberies, the battery, the assaults, people are simply not calling 911 anymore. And if that is what you're putting your victory lap on, that people refuse to call 911, then you are doing a very poor job as mayor and truly don't understand the fact that crime has not changed, just people's accommodating it has.
Raymond Lopez, we appreciate you coming on today. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox.
Now I want to play you one more video, and this is Brandon Johnson. And as we've discussed him plenty of times on this show, whatever interest he has in the migrant situation or the money that comes to the city for that, he's gonna fall on that hill. He's standing on that hill because in the face of everything that's going on in Chicago, look what he's arguing about.
Everything's better when it's free, including filing your taxes. But who actually qualifies for? The Department of Justice has hit the city of Chicago and state of Illinois with a lawsuit alleging the sanctuary status here is obstructing federal immigration enforcement.
All new tonight, our Charlie DeMar caught up with the mayor and is live now with his reaction. Charlie? And Joe and Erica, this lawsuit comes just a day after Mayor Brandon Johnson voluntarily agreed to testify before Congress next month. Johnson also adding that this is yet another example of the president creating division and chaos.
I'm going to continue to stand up and fight.
Tonight, Mayor Brandon Johnson responding after the Department of Justice accused the city and state's sanctuary status of obstructing the federal government's ability to enforce immigration laws.
We are not going to cower to political motives to undermine our value system. The American people deserve serious leadership in government right now. They don't deserve the type of chaos and division that he is attempting to propagate.
On her first day on the job, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi filed the lawsuit alleging the sanctuary laws across the state and city has resulted in countless criminals being released into Chicago who should have been held for immigration removal from the United States.
The arguments that they're making are not, they being the federal government, they're not, ridiculous or preposterous. They're creative.
Northwestern law professor Nadav Shoked says unlike Trump's failed lawsuit that took aim at sanctuary cities during his first administration, this lawsuit recognizes the federal government cannot force state or local municipalities to enforce federal laws.
So again, they acknowledge the basis of the law, which is that we can't force you to do anything. But then they try and walk around that by saying, well, but by not helping us, you're stopping us. And that's a leap.
My initial reaction to the lawsuit is that it's unfortunate, but I was able to see this coming.
Cook County Commissioner Sean Morrison says the lawsuit highlights a lack of cooperation between local and federal government when it comes to immigration, a disconnect he says poses a public safety threat.
And at the end of the day, the notion of it, the notion of the ability of our federal government to remove criminal aliens is not an extreme notion. It's not a unnecessary notion. In fact,
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker responding, saying that he will continue to prioritize state police resources for fighting crime. We're live tonight from City Hall. Charlie DeMar, CBS News, Chicago.
Joe, thank you, Charlie.
Now you think about it. It has become the unalive capital with one of the worst immigration problems and situations in the country, because the liberals are protecting immigrants at the cost of American citizens. This is why they have so many distractions and they're not letting you know what's really going on in the news. But these urban cities like Baltimore, Atlanta, New York, New Jersey, Los Angeles, these liberal-ran cities are descending into chaos. While at the same time, the Democratic Party is fear-mongering its base, inciting its constituents. And what you see in Chicago is starting to happen in cities all around the country. Nobody's talking about that. The crime, along with the deportations and the fear-mongering and everything else. Someone is creating chaos. Maybe they want order out of chaos in a new world order or something of that nature. I don't know. We got to just stay vigilant. This is Detroit HPTV coming to you out of Detroit, signing out. Keep your head on the swivel. As always, salute to all patriots. Peace. Support the channel.